My name is Steven Stott and I'm here at Beat Percussion, and today I would like to talk about some basics of tuning your cajon. Alright, now before we start, there's a few tools that you're going to need. You're going to need a small Phillips head screwdriver. You're going to need some masking tape or duct tape. I prefer masking tape. You're going to need a small Allen wrench or drum key, tuning key. There's actually one provided in your cajon, and I'll show you how to access that later. Finally, you're going to need a piece of paper and or cardboard. Okay, now there are two basic areas in which you tune your cajon: the snap corners and the internal snare mechanism. Alright, let's start with the snap corners. Now before we start showing how to tune, let's understand how these corners work. Now, if you look closely, you'll notice that each of the corners is actually loose away from the frame of the drum. This is done so that you can have a snapping sound when you force it into the frame. Alright, now, two common problems with this is if the face is too close to the corner or the gap is too large. Alright, let's address the first problem. You're playing and you notice the corners don't have any snap to them. That means they're too close. Okay, now that's an easy problem. What you're going to do is grab your screwdriver, find these top two screws here. Actually, we're going to start with this bottom one and completely remove the screw. Actually, let's just remove it about halfway. Okay, now what that should do is should allow you to move the face out in and out much easier. Alright, second thing we're going to do, take a piece of paper, rip off a small square, fold it in half, fold it again. I want to warn you in advance, most of these techniques are things that require a lot of trial and error, simply because a lot of these are preference items. So, you're just going to have to keep trying with it and find what works for you and what you like. Alright, I'm going to stick with a couple folds. Alright, now basically what I have is a wedge. What I'm going to do is wedge the face down here by the screw open further so there's a greater gap. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is slide this in here. Okay. Now it's in there. I'm going to take my screwdriver, retighten down that face screw. Do not over tighten it, just to where it's snug. All right. Now, and if it works, good. You have a good gap there that's easy to hit, doesn't take a lot of effort, but makes a crisp snapping sound. Alright, now we're going to deal with the problem of having too wide of a gap. Alright, this is a little bit more complicated, but it's the same basic techniques. First thing you're going to do is you're going to completely remove this top screw this time. Okay. Alright, take the screw, make sure not to lose that, set it down on the ground. Then you're going to go to the second screw down, and you're going to pull this one out about halfway. You don't have to take it all the way out. Couple turns. Okay, now we're ready. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take a small piece, a small square of paper, fold it a couple times, so you get about the thickness you want. Again, if you have to redo it and double the thickness, you may have to do that. Alright, I'm going to make a pretty thick one. Alright, now what I'm going to do is this time I'm going to insert the paper, make sure it's a little thicker than normal, in between the first and the second screw. Okay? Sometimes you got to wedge it open to do this. Alright, now take your first screw, reinstall it. Remember, do not over tighten it. You do not want to strip the screw out. Then tighten down the second one. Alright, now if what I've done works, it actually will deaden my drum, because what I wanted was to pull it close. It was already in a good spot, so yep, that's too tight now. But basically what you're doing is you're wedging below this fulcrum right here, which pushes the whole face down. Alright, now you may need to repeat this process. You can also do it on this top corner here. Alright, this can be done on both sides for either one. Alright, now let's talk about how we actually tune the internal snare mechanism. Alright, now we are ready to see and understand how the internal snare mechanism works. Alright, so we're going to come into the very back of the bass port, of the back of the cajon. We're going to look down inside the cajon. Alright, what you're looking at is the bottom of the snare mechanism. You see two guitar strings that run all the way to the top of the cajon and are attached. Alright, now the first thing I want you to notice is this small piece of metal sticking out of the corner of the mechanism. Alright, now I'm going to reach in and grab and pull it out for you. Alright, this is your tuning key. Alright, it's just a small Allen wrench, but this is what you need to actually tune the snare mechanism. So take it, pull it out, set it aside. Now, before we actually get into tuning the snare mechanism, I want to address one of the problems that has to be dealt with in the back. A common complaint among many cajon players is that there is a buzz or an unnecessary rattle on the drum. Basically, what that problem is these guitar strings will have too much of a gap between them and the face of the drum, allowing them to ring or actually have a tune to them. Alright, that's not what you want in cajon. Alright, that's a simple fix. All we do is grab a piece of masking tape or duct tape. Now, as you can see on the inside here, simply you tape it over the strings onto the inside of the playing face. This deadens that sound. Now, to determine which one you need to tape, whether both or just one, simply take your finger and flick it across the string inside the drum and listen for the sound. Hear the sound, play the front, and if that's the sound, the same sound that you're hearing that you don't like, you know you have the right one. If it's that, if it's both, just depends. Then you need to put a piece of tape over it, and that should deaden it. If it's a really bad problem, you may need to add a second piece. Alright? Now that we understand the basics of the snare mechanism, let's go ahead and tune. Alright, now that we know how the actual internal snare mechanism works, and we have our tuning key, we're ready to start tuning. Now, as always, there's two basic problems, two extremes. You can either have too much snare and too rattly snare that lasts more than a second, that comes with the bass, with the snare and the snap. No matter what you do, there's snare. Or you can have where there's no snare at all, and it just sounds like you're thudding on a box. Okay? Alright. Now to fix that, all we got to do is take our tuning key. What I want you to do is flip your drum upside down. I want you to locate the logo on the bottom right corner of the drum. Directly below the E of the logo is going to be a small tuning port. Alright? It's right in front of this rubber foot. Take the short end of your tuning key and insert it into that. Okay. Alright. Now what we're going to do, hold it in there, flip the cajon back up. With one hand down here, doesn't really matter, you're going to tune, and with the other you're going to test. Alright? Alright, so say right now that's too much snare for me. What I can do is I can loosen it to where the snare is completely off, or I can tighten it to where the snare is so tight it doesn't rattle anymore. Okay? What I actually want is the neutral ground right in between those. So I'm going to loosen, that's too tight for me. I'm going to loosen it right there. And that's exactly what I want. Where there's a nice crisp snare sound. Alright, now again, this is going to take a lot of trial and error. It's going to take a lot of tightening and loosening until you get exactly what you want. Alright, again, a lot of that's personal preference. Alright. Thank you for joining me. Those are the basics of how you tune and maintain your cajon. Again, good luck. Trial and error it. Have fun. Get it exactly the way you want it. I'm Steven Stott with Beat Percussion. Thank you.